Welcome to another edition of Inside the Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hutchison. And today, I want to talk about something in terms of the coaching staff, specifically basketball, hence McHale Center behind me. A lot of people are very critical of Coach Tommy Lloyd in terms of the success he's had in Arizona during his tenure here, from a first round exit his second season to getting blown out by Houston in the first season after being a number one seed, to kind of underperforming against Clemson after being ahead in that game for most of the game and losing there at the end. But if you take a look at what he's been able to do, it's quite impressive. Number one overall seed. Then they were the number two seed. I know that didn't end well against Princeton. You're a top five seed again. So every single season, they're in a good position to make the NCAA tournament. They haven't been on the border. I know last season it opened up a little bit slow with Arizona starting off 4-5, probably one of its worst starts in the last 20 plus years for the program. And things looked bleak. Things didn't look good after the UCLA loss. But it goes to show you what type of a coach he is. He was able to recollect the team, pieces that really didn't fit together at that moment in time. It kind of looked like a puzzle all jumbled up. Everything just wasn't clicking. He was able to recollect the team, get their heads straight, win a couple games, get ready for the conference play, for the Big 12 play, and then they went on a run. They beat Cincinnati. They beat West Virginia. They beat some really good teams along the way before taking that first stumble. But they were able to get back on track. You saw Jaden Bradley become the true point guard of the team. Caleb Love, after starting off slow, got really hot and played like the Caleb Love of old. You saw the lineup change up, which, Tommy doesn't love to change up the lineup, but you took a guy in KJ Lewis out of the lineup who everybody thought should have been a starter, was going to be a starter. You put Anthony Del Rosso in there. Now, he didn't excel, but what it did, it gave energy off the bench for Arizona. I think that's what the critical part of all that was in terms of giving the Wildcats Carter Bryant, KJ Lewis, Henry Vasar coming off the bench. It gave them that boost, much needed boost, and it's a credit to Tommy Lloyd to figure that out. But they are able to ride the ship, finish top three in the Big 12, finish third overall, get to the Big 12 championship game, and come within a couple of possessions of beating Houston, who played for the national title and almost won the national title game. Throughout the season, they lost to Houston twice, once in McHale Center, another game similar to that where they just couldn't get over the hump, and once in the Big 12 tournament. But impressive wins over Iowa State, impressive wins over Kansas in the Big 12 tournament, dominant wins over Baylor every time out. It was an interesting season in terms of Arizona fans aren't used to getting punched in the mouth. You look at the Pac-12 the last couple of years, the Pac-12 has been very soft, or was very soft. Outside of Arizona, UCLA every now and then with Mick Cronin, Oregon, maybe a Washington State, maybe a Utah, maybe a Colorado, the Pac-12 has been down. Pac-12 wasn't at its highest level. Arizona was able to cruise to that number one overall seed, Tommy's first season. And it kind of was a cakewalk at times. They weren't challenged. And when you go into the NCAA tournament, you have to be challenged. So hence that first round exit against Princeton when you get punched in the mouth. Hence the game against Houston, Tommy Lloyd's first season. That team Tommy had might have been his most talented team at Arizona. You had 2 first-round draft picks in Dalen Terry and Ben Matherin. You had Christian Coloco, who made the NBA. You had a bunch of dudes that could shoot. It was a very good, well-designed team that could defend at a high level. But when you faced a team like Houston that has that dog in them, for lack of a better word, but that just grit, that feistiness, they got punched in the mouth and they folded. That's all there is to it. They couldn't recover from it. They never really got back in that game. And they had a hard time against Princeton when they got punched in the mouth there too. So you move to the Big 12, you have this incredible non-conference schedule, kind of underwhelming in terms of the performance, but you took your lumps along the way. You played in some really close games that didn't go your way, and it made you battle tested. It created some toughness on the team, some grit, some desire. They called themselves the Gritty Boys midway through the season because that's how they had to play. They knew they're going to have to play tough-nosed defense, rebound the heck out of the basketball, and offense was kind of second, which isn't a Tommy Lloyd thing. Usually he's a very offensive-minded coach. He's a great offensive coach, and they still, I believe, were number one in the Big 12, averaging 82, 83 points per game. So they were still impressive, but it wasn't that 95, 90-plus point scoring team. They had a little grit to them. So, they were able to go through the Big 12 conference, and I think that's what helped them in the Big 12 tournament. You play Arizona, and you're playing Texas Tech, you're playing Kansas. Those are tough-nosed basketball programs and tough-nosed teams. And Arizona took the punches, they rolled with the punches, and they delivered knockout blows. You're talking about a heavyweight fight like Muhammad Ali versus George Foreman or Ali versus Frazier. That's what type of fight you're talking about in those Big 12 games. And what that does for you, it prepares you for the tournament. It prepares you for the NCAA tournament. Now, they didn't make it past the Sweet 16, and that's kind of the benchmark that Tommy Lloyd needs to overcome, get that monkey off his back and get to the Elite Eight and potentially get to a Final Four. I think those are the expectations of Arizona, is being able to play in Elite Eight games. I don't think Sweet 16s are the standard here in Tucson. And I think in terms of Final Fours, it's great if you can get to one every 4, 5, 6 years, but you need to be able to be in Elite Eight games and be competing to get to a Final Four and potentially a national title. Because once you get to a Final Four, sky's the limit. Anything can happen. It's that Elite Eight game that has plagued and haunted the Wildcats since 2001, basically. They haven't been to the Final Four since 2001 with Lute Olson and maybe the greatest team of all time, led by superstar talent. Yeah, I think you had like 7 NBA guys on that roster: Richard Jefferson, Gilbert Arenas, Luke Walton, a guy that wasn't an NBA guy, Jason Gardner. But I digress. It was a highly talented team. You have the incident against Illinois, where Arizona blew a 15-point lead. Salim Stoudemire, Shannon Fry, Hassan Adams, that incredible team, they choked. They couldn't get to a Final Four. Sean Miller, his second season, Derek Williams had an incredible run in the tournament, and that team was a well-oiled machine, and they missed 2 wide-open three-point shots to get to a Final Four against UConn. UConn goes on to win the national title game. Again, Sean Miller twice, back-to-back years. Wisconsin, the Nick Johnson push-off. If Brandon Ashley isn't injured, they probably go on to the Final Four and win the national title that year. That's one of the best defensive teams in the history of this program. But injuries happen and calls are made, and so they couldn't get over the hump. The next year was Stanley Johnson, poked in the eye. He didn't play the rest of the game, and Wisconsin shot damn near 67% from the field. And that's going to happen. I mean, you're not going to be able to stop teams. So the benchmark isn't Final Fours right now. The benchmark is Elite Eights, and you got to get there and put yourself in position to get to a Final Four. And right now, Tommy needs to get over that hump. But still, even with losing to Duke in the Sweet 16, I give Tommy all the respect in the world, because it could have been a very easy game for Arizona to fold. They were down by 15-plus points. Things weren't going well. It was looking worse than it did in Tucson when Duke played Arizona and gave them a whooping in Tucson. And then all of a sudden, things started to click. Defense started to play hard. They were making open shots. They were getting out in transition. They punched Duke right back in the mouth. Came within, I think, 2, 3, 4 points, something like that, 2 possessions. And there was that non-technical foul call. That didn't get called. It should have been a technical foul. They called it on Arizona on the tie-up before. Things happen. It doesn't go Arizona's way, but you have a game where Caleb Love put up 35-plus points, and you're right there against Duke, who went to a Final Four and might have been considered the best team in the country. So you're moving in the right direction. Because I think previous seasons, I think that Lloyd first team would have folded against Duke easily. That year prior with Clemson, they wouldn't have even been close. Duke would have run them off the map once they got punched in the face. This team has a grittiness, or that team had a grittiness that you haven't seen out of Arizona in quite some time, and you've never seen out of a Tommy Lloyd team. To be honest, they had more grittiness than I've ever seen a Gonzaga team have. Gonzaga isn't known for grit, but you're going to have grit to win a title. You're going to have grit to play well in the Big 12. You're going to have grit to go far in the tournament. And I think 2 things happened for Coach Lloyd. I think he learned it when they played Houston and got punched in the mouth. And from that point on, he was trying to build that. And I think he also learned that when Gonzaga played in the national title game against Baylor. I think Gonzaga was a far more talented team, but Baylor absolutely punched them in the mouth, never looked back, and ran them off the road. So I think those are learning moments, even though Tommy wasn't the head coach at the time for Gonzaga. Well, at any time for Gonzaga, he was the top assistant. He saw firsthand. And then he saw the Houston game here in Tucson for the U of A. So I think those are learning experiences that have shaped Tommy Lloyd into the coach he is today, because we saw it throughout the season. Every media member that was there got a sense of a guy that was a little more rough around the edges, that was a little more gritty. Tommy is one of the most polite and genuine coaches I've ever met at the college basketball level. Great dude to be around, a guy that you would love to have a conversation with. But, oh shucks, maybe we'll win it next time. And, not every, it's just one game out of a 30 plus game season. That went away. When they lost, he was not happy. He talked about overcoming stuff, and he believed that his team would. And he said, you and the media probably doubt us and this, that, and this. But there was a little bit of an edge to Tommy. And I think it paid off for the team. I think it paid off for the program. I think it's made Tommy Lloyd a better coach. So before Arizona fans go jumping down Tommy Lloyd's throat in terms of not getting to an Elite Eight, think about how they're progressing. Think about how they're developing players. Think about the guys they're putting in the NBA. Think about the guys they're finding overseas. Think about the changes on the coaching staff, and yet you're seeing progress out there on the court. If you look at Arizona right now, they're in a much better shape. They're in better shape as a program than they were Sean Miller's last 4 seasons in Tucson. And I know that's hard for people to hear because a lot of Arizona fans love Sean Miller, but that program was on a downward trajectory. It wasn't looking good. You missed the tournament one year due to the FBI scandal. You probably, in my opinion, shouldn't have been in the tournament. They probably would have made it with the Nico Mannion team. That team was not very good and in a downward trajectory. They were getting softer. It was getting harder to recruit, and it was getting harder to watch year in and year out. Here comes Tommy Lloyd, takes over some players left over from the Sean Miller era, gets them the first overall seed. And from that point on, you've seen Tommy develop as a coach. You've seen Arizona develop as a program and get back where it needs to be. And now there's grit to it. I think when you're able to add that grit, that Big 12 grit, you're going to go a long way. So I know we're a long way from the college basketball season, but Arizona fans, I think you're in great hands. Tommy Lloyd is the right man for the job. You just got to be a little bit patient with him. Again, he's a young coach, relatively speaking, and he's developing as a coach too, and you're seeing trends in the right direction. I think it's going to pay off in the future for the Wildcats.